By the way, so many people today borrow for consumption. They borrow to buy consumables. They borrow to spend. They borrow to take care of their recurrent expenses: food, rent, fuel, bus fare, clothing, just to mention but a few. Borrowing for consumption can be very deceiving. It gives one the feeling of wanting to justify their borrowing, makes one feel like they did not borrow for a bad thing. If you borrowed for food, for example, you feel like you did the right thing. You borrowed for a good cause. I meet so many people who casually tell me that at least I did not borrow for a bad reason. I just borrowed to buy food. I just borrowed to pay rent. I just borrowed for fuel. I just borrowed for bus fare. I just borrowed to buy clothes. Those reasons sound so nice, so interesting, because those reasons perhaps fall in the category of basic needs, or maybe they look like they are essentials to you. And that is the temptation of borrowing for consumption. There seems to be a very thin line between bad debt and good debt, especially where we are borrowing for things that look like essentials. Here is the thing. Debt is not free money. Debt is costly. Debt comes at a cost. Every debt has a burden element in it. That then means that as you plan to get into debt, as you plan to borrow money, you want to be sure that you will use the borrowed money on a cause that is value adding. You don't just want to borrow money and spend it for spending's sake, because this is not free money. This is not like you earned money. Debt is not a substitute for income. You want to be sure that you are not weakening your financial muscle for the sake of borrowing. Borrowing for consumption is a bait to get you into the trap of debt. Many of the consumer items, many of the items that people borrow to spend money on in the consumable bracket are recurrent in nature. Things like rent, things like food are recurrent in nature. That means that they are not one-off things. You will not spend money on them today and say bye-bye to them. You see, today if you felt hungry and you get the need to borrow to buy a packet of unga, it looks like a very nice feeling, a very nice decision. But here is the reality, that you will borrow and buy unga today, but the truth is tomorrow you will still feel hungry. That means that if your next payday is very far from where you are today, then you're going to borrow very many times, or at least a big amount that then will allow you to buy as many packets of unga that can carry you until the next payday. So that is how it begins to lure you into perennial borrowing, into borrowing every other day, because the needs are perennial. The needs are recurrent in nature. If you borrow to pay your rent, if you do not have a deliberate plan of how you will solve this puzzle next time, so that then you do not have the shortfall that you had today that necessitated borrowing for rent, the truth is, even in the next cycle and the following ones, you will still borrow for rent. That is why I call it a bait to get you into the trap of debt. Borrowing for consumption speaks two things about you, and these are not interesting things. The first thing is that borrowing for consumption says that you are not able to live within your means. It is a difficult truth, but we have to face it. It means that for one reason or the other, you have found yourself at a place where you've not been able to live within your means. You have lived outside your means. The reasons will be varying, but that is the truth. That is the explanation. That your income was this size, but you have spent your income in a size that is bigger than the size of the income. You have lived outside, you've lived beyond your means. Now, living within your means does not mean that you resign to fate and lose your ambition. Living within your means that your income needs to be able to contain your living standard, to contain your lifestyle. So it is not wrong for you to want a better living standard. In fact, you have a right to enjoy all the good things in this life, but you must enjoy them when your means have allowed you to do so. That means that the ideal situation then is for you, first of all, to expand your means and then live within the expanded means. Now, tragedy of today is that so many of us will elevate our living standards and then pray so hard and wish and hope that one day a miracle will happen and our means will follow us and expand and accommodate us in our expanded living standards. It doesn't work that way. And for so many people, you see, when you elevate your standard before your means are expanded, it means then you will be operating in a negative because your expenditure is bigger than your income. Your means are here, but you have grown past them to another bigger level. Yet you expect the bigger level to be contained by these small means. So that means you will perennially be borrowing to take care of the shortfall between your new standard and what your means can accommodate. So you have to keep being ambitious because you have every right to enjoy every good thing under the sun. But you must remember, first of all, to grow the means and then follow them with your living standard and expand it in a manner that is consistent, in a manner that can be taken care of by the expanded means. So that's the first implication of borrowing for consumption. Number two, borrowing for consumption says that you are eating your tomorrow today. In other words, if you have earned your salary at the end of this month, what you have earned is supposed to take care of you in the coming cycle until the next time you receive income. So when the money gets depleted a couple of days down the line and you begin borrowing, you are borrowing, promising your lenders that you will pay them when your money comes. Remember, the money that is coming is supposed to take you through the next cycle ahead. So when you begin to borrow to buy consumables today, in the promise of repaying when your money comes, you're already eating into that tomorrow today. The big question has always been, what will you eat when tomorrow comes? Because you've eaten it today. And that is a dangerous position to find yourself in. Look, borrowing for consumption is a tricky affair. Be cautious, because you can burn your fingers. You can do better. And this is, by the way,